Welcome to NarrativeNook audio tales where enchanted stories come to life. If you enjoy our stories, please subscribe, like and share to support our channel. Enjoy listening. While Cyrus was thinking to himself, Lloyd, who was still standing next to him, spoke suddenly. The color of his eyes was dark. Indescribable terror could be felt as he looked down. But at the same time, there was a delusion of him looking at Cyrus wholeheartedly. Lloyd stared at the man in front of him. He asked Cyrus the question he was most interested in. "Why did you want me to visit you? What do you want to tell me?" he asked in a clean tone. Cyrus knew he could not make an omelette without breaking eggs. He stared at Lloyd, who seemed like he was evaluating his worth. He then gritted his teeth heartlessly as he looked at Harvey, whose face could not be seen clearly in the dark room. "You can't listen to what I'm about to tell Hank. He will decide whether he wants to tell you." Harvey raised his head and gazed at Cyrus, who seemed particularly presumptuous in front of Lloyd. He smiled instead of being angry. "Sure." Harvey left the room without dragging his feet. He even closed the old door. Cyrus was stunned by Harvey's reaction. All these years, what Harvey wanted to know was what I'm about to tell Hank. I was prepared for him to say no. I can't believe this went smoothly. God's plan. Cyrus waved at Lloyd gently after making sure Harvey could not hear him. He smiled as he said, "Hank, I can't believe you're all grown up now." Lloyd, who was also known as Hank, noticed that Cyrus was trying to be friendly. He then nodded his head as he lowered his eyes. "Stop wasting my time, Cyrus." Cyrus thought Lloyd was warning him that Harvey might come back anytime. He quickly said what Lloyd cared about most. "Hank, you must promise me to bring me out of here if I tell you the secret. Save me from that torturous monster." Lloyd glanced at Cyrus ambiguously. He then nodded his head effortlessly. "I promise." Cyrus did not doubt Lloyd. He breathed a sigh of relief. Hank Ellison is an honorable man, just like his name. He never lied. Cyrus opened his filthy mouth after thinking that to himself. He slowly said out the secret that had been on his mind all these years. "I didn't kill the girl." It seemed like Cyrus remembered something. His eyes glowed with a feint of terror. It appeared that whatever happened at that time still terrified him. "I was being hunted down back then. I didn't fire the gun. Yes, I did hold the gun to her head. I wanted to kill her to scare you and Harvey. But when I was about to fire the gun, a bullet hit my right hand from nowhere. I didn't fire the gun. Look at my hand if you don't believe me." He held out his hand as he said that. He showed Lloyd his bony right palm. There was a deep bullet wound scar on it indeed. It seemed like an old scar. The scar looked abnormally hideous, probably because it was not treated professionally. Lloyd remained silent. His eyes twinkled with amusement as he looked at Cyrus attentively. "The girl who nearly saved us is still alive. I guess most probably Harvey didn't expect this too. The girl who I thought went all out to save us didn't die. She's still living somewhere in this world." Cyrus was not sure if Lloyd believed him. "After I was shot, my gun fell to the ground. My vision was blurry. I could only see a dark figure take the girl away. Not long after they left, I was tracked down by the men who were hunting me down. A gold-plated jade necklace was left at the scene." "What happened to the necklace?" Lloyd did not want to miss out on any clue regarding the girl. The truth is, Lloyd remembered clearly what happened after that. He thought the girl was murdered by Cyrus on that day. Not long after that, Lloyd and Harvey heard about the intense gunfight that happened on the hill. Cyrus did not return after the gunfight. There were only a few gangsters who were guarding the place when the police officers arrived. Abducted kids were separated into a few rooms. All of them were blindfolded, and their mouths were covered. The kids were emaciated. Numbness can be seen on their faces. Harvey and Lloyd remembered Cyrus's voice clearly even though he escaped without them. There was no way they misidentified Cyrus. Harvey captured Cyrus and imprisoned him here in the sanatorium for revenge. But most importantly, he wanted to know the girl's whereabouts from Cyrus. However, Cyrus knew he could not tell Harvey what happened on the hill. Harvey was vengeful. He would have killed him if he knew the truth. Moreover, he did not know where the girl went. Cyrus raised his head. He grabbed Lloyd's shirt tightly as he stared at him. Lloyd was calm. Cyrus's bloodshot eyes were filled with pleas. The police took the necklace away. I honestly have no idea the girl's whereabouts. Hank, I've told you everything. Please get me out of here. I don't want to die yet. I want to live well. Cyrus would only be spared after Lloyd knew what actually happened. That was the reason why he must tell Lloyd. Lloyd stared at Cyrus coldly. He was so strong in his eyes back then. But come to think of it now, he's just a weak man. He's a hypocritical, selfish, and cowardly loser. He gave Cyrus a gentle smile. Do you know her name? For a moment, Cyrus almost thought Lloyd agreed. He quickly said out the name that had been waiting to be spitted out from his mouth. Nicole Wallace. I wouldn't forget. She was a gorgeous little girl. There was only an old lady that took care of her. The little girl's name's Nicole Wallace, he said excitedly. He was filled with joy when he said that. That was his last stand. He then stared at Lloyd, eagerly waiting for him to save him from this dark prison. Lloyd stood still. A squeaking sound could be heard as Harvey opened the door. It was hard to tell if he was happy or angry. But in Cyrus's eyes, Harvey looked as scary as a demon. I didn't know the kid that went all out to save us was, Harvey thought. But when Cyrus said the kid's name's Nicole, I finally understood why I was so possessive when I first met her. That was all because she was the girl that Lloyd and I were searching for all these years. We agreed that whoever found her first will marry her and treat her well. But I missed her because Cyrus refused to tell me what he knew. Harvey raised his eyes to look at Cyrus. His eyes were filled with spooky dim light. Leave us. Lloyd did not speak. He merely glanced at Harvey. He then left the room without the slightest thought of saying good words for Cyrus. Cyrus was stunned when he saw what had happened. His eyes were filled with disbelief instantly. Hank, you promised me. You promised me. How could you leave me with this monster? Lloyd turned around to look at Harvey as he heard what Cyrus said. Just when Cyrus thought Lloyd wanted to intercede for him, Lloyd said, "Not here. Take him out." He turned back and gazed at Cyrus as he said coldly, "I promised him. Yes. I promised to get him out of here. But I didn't agree to his second request." Cyrus slumbered into his bed. His body exudes some dying person's odor. It was like he understood something. He stared dead in Lloyd's direction. He did not look away even for a second. Why is he doing this to me? Harvey walked toward Cyrus slowly as he saw Lloyd leave the room. He smiled gently as he said, "Whether you tell him or me, it's the same." Cyrus heard his low voice. It appeared to be a different kind of cold. "Don't forget that Lloyd and I were like brothers before we followed you. What makes you think that we're different?" Harvey said. Harvey and Lloyd already made things clear before they met with Cyrus. Their plan was for Lloyd to get Cyrus's trust first, then made him spill out the secret. As for what was going to happen next, Harvey's face was expressionless. He stared at Cyrus, who was sent into panic as he walked closer. There was a strange cold on his face. No one knew what was going to happen to Cyrus. Harvey walked downstairs slowly. Lloyd was giving a young nurse his signature at the front desk just when Harvey reached downstairs. Lloyd was standing upright, looking like a pine that would never bend. Harvey walked past him. There was a smile on his face. He looked exceptionally handsome. "Let's go," Harvey said. She stared at Harvey and Lloyd as they walked away slowly with an intrigued look on her face. She came back to herself after a long pause. "They're so handsome." The indicator light in front of the door flicked a few times just when they reached the front of the sanatorium. The silence between them finally came to an end. "What did he tell you?" Harvey asked slowly in the dark. Lloyd repeated what Cyrus told him with an unchanged expression. Harvey had a general idea when Cyrus was telling him about it. But his pupil shrank drastically when he heard the final name mentioned by Lloyd. It was dark at that time. No one knew if Lloyd noticed Harvey's change. Harvey got back to his normal state quickly. There was still a smile on his face. He looked superficially gentle. What he was going to say next was chilling. "I'll deal with him." Lloyd nodded his head as he stared at Harvey. The vibe between them was creepy. As if there were a rapport and intention to kill existed side by side in the air. "We shall never meet again." He turned around and walked toward the black Maybach that was parked quietly at the side. His slender figure sat in the car quickly. He then started his car and sped away without looking back. Lloyd was not obsessed with Nicole, unlike Harvey. He only wanted to know her whereabouts to make himself feel better, that was all. Harvey stood still. He covered his face with his hand gently as he looked at the black car driving away. He had a theory back when Sean was investigating Nicole's file. Nicole's file had the Ellison family's handwriting. This meant that she must have been involved in the abduction back then. "I guess Nicole didn't recognize that the two boys who nearly got her killed were us." A soft laugh came out from his lips slowly. It sounded strangely sad. "Nicole and I weren't meant to be together. After all, she has Jared. Lloyd doesn't deserve to be close to Nicole too. He still doesn't know that S is Nicole. Even if he knows about it in the future, he can do nothing. I met Nicole too late after all." Harvey smiled bitterly as he thought about that. He turned around and got into his white Maserati. He left this hopeless place immediately. It was peaceful and quiet in the cafe. Nicole chatted with Carl for a while before she noticed him rubbing his forehead tiredly. "He must have come to look for me right after he got off the plane. He's so tired because he's still jet-lagged from the time difference," Nicole thought. She quickly stood up before turning to Carl. "Where do you stay?" she asked. Carl raised an eyebrow and smiled slightly. "Why? Will you be sending me back?" he asked lazily. Nicole nodded without hesitation. Then, she stood up and walked out. When Claus saw them leaving, he walked up and flashed Nicole a smile. He twirled the car keys and said playfully, "Mr. Friend of Ms. Riddle. The chairman has instructed us to send you wherever you wish you go." Carl looked at the man in shock. "And your chairman is?" Nicole glanced at Jared in silence. He was leaning against the bar counter and did not seem to notice them. However, the moment she cast her gaze at him, he lifted his head slightly to meet her eyes. Carl followed Nicole's gaze. When he saw Jared, he paused before asking incredulously, "That's him?" Claus nodded innocently. It did not take long before Claus started feeling uncomfortable. He twitched the corner of his lips before saying in a decisive tone, "It's fine." Meanwhile, Jared stood up and sauntered up to them. "You don't come to Hustuaberg often. Since you're Nicole's friend, we must do what we can to make you feel at home," he said with a smile. Jared then walked up to Nicole and gently grabbed her hand. He was now standing right in front of Carl. Carl watched as Nicole did not struggle out of his grip. He sighed deeply. "It's fine." Then, he turned around and walked toward the door. Nicole frowned slightly at his turned back and said, "But you're leaving soon. Why don't you stay over at my place for a day?" Carl froze instantly. Then, a smile slowly formed on his lips. "I knew it. I knew Nicole couldn't possibly ignore me when I traveled thousands of miles to find her," he thought. At the thought of this, Carl turned around and titled his head. "Let's go." A smile appeared in Nicole's eyes as she gently tucked her hair behind her ear. Claus stared at her distractedly. Meanwhile, Jared threw him an indifferent glance. Claus quickly turned away and said loudly, "I'll go get the car." Nicole did not respond. She walked out with a calm expression. Carl saw her walking in his direction. Just as he was about to flash her a smile, he noticed Jared beside her. His gaze doesn't seem friendly, Claus thought. Carl had a slight look of reluctance. He then frowned at Jared. "Why are you tagging along?" he asked coldly. Jared did not look at him and continued trailing behind Nicole mindlessly. Their footsteps looked surprisingly in sync from behind. To send Nicole home. Carl was speechless. "I haven't thought of this. Am I really going to let this man who embarrassed me on our first meeting send me home?" he wondered. Just as Carl was about to say something, Nicole spoke. "My car isn't in Hustuaberg, you know where it is. What's more, you don't have a Hustuaberg driver's license, so this is the best solution," she said indifferently. After Nicole finished her sentence, she turned to Jared with a slight smile. "Am I right?" she asked. Jared stared at her dotingly. "Yes, you are." Carl looked at them. He was speechless. Regardless, Nicole has a point. Not only is this the fastest solution, but it's also the safest one, she thought. At this thought, he sped up his walking pace and nodded at Nicole reluctantly. Then, the four set off toward the Riddle family's house. Carl sat in the front passenger seat with a wronged look for most of the ride. When he finally turned around to look at Nicole, he was stunned. "I was too caught up in my emotions just now. I didn't even notice how pretty Nicole looks today," Carl thought. The Nicole that he usually saw was barefaced and dressed casually. On the other hand, the Nicole he was currently looking at looked like an angel. Nicole turned to him as if she had noticed his gaze. Her beautiful eyes looked at him confusedly. It was as if she was questioning his gaze on her. All of a sudden, Carl's face was flushed. He was no longer the smooth talker around ladies. He had even forgotten what he was about to say. All he could think about was her beautiful face. Jared stared at Carl's focused gaze and narrowed his eyes. He then winded down his window lazily. All of a sudden, a gust of cold air entered the car. Carl shivered and instantly regained his composure. After that, he turned to glare at Jared. This was his way of condemning Jared's shameless behavior. Jared lightly raised his eyebrows. His gaze toward Carl was cold. It was as if he was silently challenging him. "What are you going to do about it?" Jared thought. Nicole turned to glance at Jared. She rarely saw him make such expressions. She could not help but smile slightly. Nicole ignored the two of them. She looked at Claus, who was driving silently. "Where are the clothes that I was wearing before this?" Since she had left the house in a rush, she did not manage to get changed. Claus did not dare to answer. Meanwhile, Jared looked over and spoke. "I've gotten someone to send them back to your house," he replied lazily. Nicole glanced at him and was quiet. She then nodded and quickly turned her gaze back out the window. Claus drove quickly, so it did not take long before they reached the Riddle family's house. Nicole and Carl got off the car quickly. Carl watched as Nicole bade Jared goodbye. After that, she led him to the manor. Carl quickly ran up to her and complained, "Nicole, what's the matter with you? Why are you with such a terrible man?" Nicole did not respond. She looked at the Riddle family manor with slight surprise in her eyes. Mr. Riddle Sr. was standing in front of the hall. He appeared to have sent off a guest. The smile on his face was apparent. Damien and Dexter stood beside Mr. Riddle Sr. with proud expressions. When the two caught sight of Nicole walking toward them, they quickly recomposed themselves and revealed slightly awkward expressions. Nicole ignored them. Instead, she walked straight up to Sean and Steve and stared at their calm expressions. "What's the matter?" she whispered. Carl trailed behind her and slightly raised his eyebrows at the people in front of him. "Are they Nicole's family members?" he wondered. At this thought, he trudged up to them. Sean was about to speak when he saw the tall and handsome foreigner behind Nicole. He could not help but frown slightly. "Who's this Nicole?" he asked. Nicole glanced at Carl and said casually, "This is my friend, he'll be staying over for a day." Carl flashed a genuine smile at them. When they all saw how his emerald eyes seemingly sparkled with charm, they could not help but suspect him of having impure intentions toward Nicole. All of a sudden, all of them were looking at him cautiously. On the other hand, Nicole seemed to have understood the look in her brother's and grandfather's eyes. She did not know whether to laugh or cry. "We're just good friends. He came all the way from Macrunia to meet me. I can't possibly ask him to find a place outside, right?" Both Sean and Steve calmly observed Carl. Meanwhile, Mr. Riddle Sr. coughed lightly and said in a kind voice, "A friend of Nicole is a guest of the Riddle family. Daniel, bring our guest to his room." Daniel nodded. He then smiled at Carl and introduced himself. When Carl learned that he was Nicole's father, his gaze was instantly filled with respect. The two of them then walked into the house while chatting away. After Nicole was sure that the two had left, then only did she turn around to look at them. She lifted a brow and asked, "What exactly happened?" Sean and Steve looked at each other before saying slowly, "The bidding for the land was this afternoon. We won." Sean had a meaningful look in his eyes when he noticed Nicole's calm demeanor. He thought of the phone call Sebastian had with his son. He mentioned something about someone from the Riddle family being Hustruberg's top gemstone appraiser. This person surely played a big part in their win today, Sean thought. Steve was also catching on to something. He proceeded to look at Nicole with slight surprise. "Sean, is Nicole that person?" Sean did not respond. He merely turned to Nicole with a seemingly questioning gaze. "Nicole, you know Mr. Wyance, don't you?" Damien abruptly lifted his head when he heard their questions. "Sean and Steve stole the show today. I lost a foothold in this family a long time ago. I didn't get any recognition even though I was the person in charge of the first round of bidding." But why did Sean ask such a question? Did they not win by themselves, but through some kind of special relationship? But who's Nicole? How could she possibly know Mr. Wyance? Damien wondered. He stared at Nicole with a hint of confusion. He had attended the Holder family's cocktail party today. He managed to catch a glimpse of the ruckus happening. Since Nicole is acquainted with both the Johnston family and Holder family, it wouldn't be odd if she also knows Mr. Wyance, Damien thought. Just as he was in deep thought, someone behind him said tauntingly, "Sean, how stupid are you to think that Nicole would know Mr. Wyance?" It's Dylan's voice, he thought. Dylan had been quiet for a few days after Mr. Riddle Sr. publicly reprimanded him. Who would have guessed that he would show up again? Mr. Riddle Sr. frowned deeply at the sound of his voice. "You disgrace. How dare you show your face here?" When Dylan walked into the manor, he looked at Mr. Riddle Sr. with a mixture of hatred and fear. However, he quickly regained his boldness as if a thought had occurred to him. If Mr. Wyance knew someone from the Riddle family, it would most definitely be Snow, he said proudly. Snow even got invited by Harvey Ellison to his family's banquet for the upper class, Dylan thought smugly while looking at Nicole. Why would a thief like her know Mr. Wyance? She's not worthy of knowing him, he said fiercely. Nicole looked at Dylan. He had an arrogant expression and looked like a villain. She then smiled mysteriously. Dylan stared at her smile and, "Why are you dressed like that? Were you also planning to attend the Holder family's banquet yet were not invited?" he asked disdainfully. After everyone heard Dylan's question, they were stunned for a moment. They turned to look at Nicole's outfit. He's right. This is an evening dress one would wear to a banquet. Anyway, it looks pretty expensive, they thought. Everyone looked at Nicole with puzzled gazes. However, Nicole did not explain herself but turned to Mr. Riddle Sr. instead. "Grandpa, I think I saw some guests just now," she asked casually. Mr. Riddle Sr. was also staring at Nicole's outfit with narrowed eyes. He seemed to have figured something out. However, he instantly forgot what he was thinking about as his train of thought was interrupted by Nicole's question. Mr. Riddle Sr. turned to look at his granddaughter. He had a strange expression instead of his usually serious one. "That's right. They're all old acquaintances that haven't been in contact with our family since our downfall. I don't know what happened, but all of them came over and wanted to cotton up to me. Isn't it odd?" Dylan spoke before Nicole could. "Dad, it must be because of Snow. You probably don't know about this yet, but Snow attended the banquet with Harvey today. It's likely that they changed their attitude after seeing the relationship between the Riddle and Ellison family." He then turned to look at everyone else smugly. "Why worry about the future when we have Harvey?" he thought. Mr. Riddle Sr. ignored him and turned to Nicole. "She looked exceptionally gorgeous today." "Is that so?" he drawled. Sean and Steve were also looking at Nicole. They had a feeling that the matter had something to do with their remarkable sister. Even though Nicole never brought it up, the Johnston family's attitude toward them was telling. Damien and Dexter stood across them. Damien clearly believed Dylan's words more but remained silent. However, he thought of how he did not see anyone from the Rogers family at today's banquet. What on earth is happening? Damien wondered. Suddenly, the gate behind them was opened, and a BMW sports car drove in. Chloe and Snow got out and walked toward them. The two instantly spotted Nicole. They looked at her with faint hatred in their eyes. On the other hand, Nicole gazed at Snow's expression icily. When Snow saw Nicole's gaze, she felt a little guilty. Regardless, her guilt was quickly washed away by her jealousy. Even though Nicole helped me find the diamond, it doesn't change the fact that she snatched Harvey away from me, she thought. Chloe continued staring at Nicole coldly. It was as if she wanted to tear her to shreds. Damien saw the look on Chloe's face and was visibly disappointed. He did not look at her with the pleased gaze he usually had. The banquet today changed his view on his daughter. Dylan did not notice the weird atmosphere. He examined Snow head to toe excitedly. He quickly saw the ring on her finger. She clearly wasn't wearing a ring when she left. At the thought of this, he asked delightedly, "Snow, did Harvey propose to you?" For a moment, Snow was startled by her father's words. She regained her composure and slowly shook her head. "Nope." Snow caressed the ring while looking at Nicole with mixed emotions. She intended to let everyone get a clear view of the ring. It was as if the ring was Harvey's promise to her. "The ring is back in my hands, but it didn't give me the effect I wanted," she thought. At this thought, a look of resentment appeared in Snow's eyes. "It's all because of Nicole. She stole Harvey away from me. Otherwise, why would Harvey treat me so coldly?" she thought again. However, she quickly regained her composure. Snow flashed her father a soft smile and said, "But it'll happen soon. If Luca's plan works, it'll be equivalent to making Harvey fall for me again. When the time comes, I'm certain Harvey and I will walk down the aisle." Snow thought with a wild glint in her eyes. Meanwhile, Dylan had just experienced a roller coaster of emotions. He initially thought Harvey was about to become his son-in-law and was elated beyond speech. However, Snow told him that it was not true. But then, she told him he was about to happen. "Snow, are you serious?" he asked anxiously. Upon seeing Snow nod, everyone reacted differently. Dylan was practically ecstatic. He scanned the crowd with an arrogant expression. Then, he said to everyone, including Mr. Riddle Sr., conceitedly, "I told you." "What did I tell you?" "I told you, all these families are paying us visits because of Snow." Mr. Riddle Sr.'s expression remained unchanged. He turned to Snow and asked ambiguously, "Snow, is it really true?" Snow kept quiet and lowered her head shyly. Everyone took her silence as a sign of her admitting it. Sean and Steve glanced at each other silently. On the other hand, Damien gave Snow a meaningful glance and said with a smile, "We shall await the good news then, Snow." Snow met his eyes and said with what appeared to be embarrassment, "Please don't make fun of me, Uncle Damien." Damien merely smiled in response. Snow and Harvey stopped at the third table. Naturally, neither saw him standing behind nor knew he was present. Even though he was standing quite the distance away, he still managed to get a good view of what happened. Harvey does not intend to propose to her, I'm sure of it. Moreover, Chloe was standing right beside her. She had a clearer view than me, but she still didn't say a thing. At this point, I can't even tell if my daughter is smart or stupid anymore. On the contrary, the person who appears to have gotten proposed by Harvey, Nicole, did not say a word. Damien thought. He narrowed his eyes and did not say a word. All of his emotions were hidden behind his eyeglasses. Mr. Riddle Sr. ignored Snow and the ecstatic Dylan. He then turned to Sean and Steve, who had been silent the entire time, and looked at them pleased and approvingly. Sean and Steve have helped us overcome the most challenging task. The success of today's bidding has resolved the crisis our family has faced these recent years. Let's have a dinner party tomorrow night to celebrate. As soon as those words came out of Mr. Riddle Sr.'s mouth, Snow and Chloe turned to look at the two from the fourth household in surprise. They won? Even Dad's tender was rejected, but you're telling me they won? At this moment, Carl and Daniel, who seemed deep in conversation, walked down the stairs. Nicole raised her eyebrows. She glanced at Snow and Dylan casually while she ignored their provocation. She then looked at Carl walking toward her and said, "Why are you not taking a rest?" Carl greeted his elders politely before turning to Nicole. "As soon as we met, Uncle and I hit it off. So we decided to go out for dinner to discuss the origins of human beings." The corners of Sean and Steve's mouths began to twitch when they saw their dad, who was impressed by Carl. "I can't believe someone has the same interest as Dad." It was said that Daniel studied medicine to understand the characteristics of humans better. Has he found out about their origins? Nicole's face lit up with interest. She quickly walked upstairs and said, "Wait for me. I'll go get changed." What? Is she interested in the origins of mankind? Like father, like daughter, I guess. Sean was expressionless. Steve wanted to stop Nicole from going, but he decided not to in the end. Dylan, on the other hand, started laughing and clapping his hands. "Oh, Daniel. Your family is hopeless. Discuss the origins of mankind?" Ha! Daniel was accustomed to Dylan's ridicule. Thus, he just frowned in discomfort while he waited for his daughter. However, coldness flashed across Carl's eyes as he looked at the man in front of him. Of course, there'll always be trash wherever you go, he thought. Dylan did not feel uneasy. He continued to look at Daniel and Carl with disdain. Ugh, what's up with the foreigner? Nicole's weird, but the people she knows are even weirder. Carl's emerald eyes gradually turned into a straight line, like a cold-blooded animal looking at its prey. The look on his handsome face was chilling as he gently cracked his fingers and said, "What did you say?" After hearing that, Dylan was stunned for a moment. Snow and Chloe, who stood behind him, watched in surprise as Carl walked closer. Jealousy then arose in those two. What in the world is going on? Why does Nicole have so many outstanding men surrounding her? Carl looked at Dylan with indifference. He was approximately 6 feet 3 inches tall, enough to make Dylan go out of breath. Dylan noticed the chilling look in the emerald-like eyes staring at him. "You can say whatever you want about me," Carl said coldly. "But don't you dare talk about Nicole like that." Chloe and Snow were annoyed when they heard this. She must have put a spell on them or something. There's no way everyone's so loyal to her, they thought. Dylan felt the pressure Carl was putting on him. He was scared. Sweat dripped down his face, and his legs trembled as he backed up. "What do you want from me? I'm warning you. This is the Riddle family home." Carl did not back down. Instead, he sneered with a face full of ruthlessness and disdain. "Oh yeah? What about it?" Everyone was shocked at his response. Even Mr. Riddle Sr.'s face turned solemn. Damien and Dexter looked at Carl with some doubts. How could someone say that? Does he not take the Riddle family seriously? Even though our family status declined over the years, our family is still up in the ranks. Snow could not help but interject, "You are so arrogant. Do you not take us seriously? I'll have you know that my family is one of the top 10 families in Hustuaberg." Carl looked at Snow with a stern look on his face. He did not know who she was, but judging by her behavior, he knew she was an enemy of Nicole's. The corners of his lips twitched slightly after hearing what she said. "Oh, you with a limited outlook, do you know that Macrunia is—" Carl. Someone interrupted his words. He turned around to look at Nicole, who was standing on the stairs. Her expression was indifferent, but there were no emotions behind her eyes. Her eyes glazed over Dylan as she said to Carl, "I'm ready. Let's go." Carl looked at the people standing in front of him and frowned slightly. However, he did not get mad at Nicole for interrupting. Instead, he nodded, gave Dylan a warning look, and followed Nicole outside. Halfway out the door, he noticed that Daniel was not following them. He then turned to him with a pair of beautiful eyes and said, "Uncle, let's go." As if he had woken up from a dream, Daniel replied, "Oh," and followed the two outside. After the three of them left, Dylan let out a huge breath and almost fell to the ground. Well, that was terrifying. Where did Nicole find this guy? He had such a murderous vibe, he thought. Dylan then wiped the sweat out of his face and realized the words in his thoughts. Murderous vi. Did that foreigner think that he could kill me? Anger rose in his entire being as he stood up and started to accuse Nicole. "Dad, look at the type of people Nicole brings to this house. Who knows what he would have done if she did not interrupt him in time?" Dylan was his son. How could he not have said something?
Thank you for listening. If you have enjoyed this story, please like and share so others can see it too. Also hit the subscription button and notification bell so you can be notified on our next release. Thank you for your support. God bless you.